Hi guys, Coach RJ here and welcome to our new episode of RJ's Math and Science Workshop where we learn as one and we learn with fun. So, it's a nice day today guys. New opportunity to learn for integral calculus playlists and series and new environment guys, okay? So, don't forget to subscribe guys to my YouTube channel, then click the bell button for more notifications and share this one to the others, especially those who are taking their advanced classes, doing their summative assessments and preparatory assessments and anything. So stay tuned and have a great day. So guys, in the last video, we have talked about a review in algebra, summation notations, in which that topic will be used in this derivation, which refers to our new lesson in integral calculus guys, the definite integrals. So when we recall indefinite integrals, yung indefinite integrals kasi, when we say indefinite, wala po siyang certain na values. Given lang tayo ng function guys, yung expression, then we have plus c at the last term. In the definite integral, regardless sa kanyang function na ma-form, if there's a sub-intervals or limits that is present to the interval, to the expression, then we will have just a real number answer. Okay? Or it can be any number na nandyan. As long as we will have an answer that is a number, not a variable, not an expression. Okay? So, yun po yung definite integral. And for our succeeding topics, we will just talk about these applications. And one of the nicest applications of this definite integral is the area of the plane region. Remember, basically, when we solve for the area of the rectangle, we will just multiply the dimensions length and width. And for the circle, we will just have pi r squared. Then, for the square, we have side times side. Pero in this case, if we will use the area of the plane region, how can we get the area given the intervals, then given the function? How can we get the area of that region that is we will refer? So, parang mahirap siya kung ilang times width natin kasi meron tayong sides na hindi accurate. So, in order to understand that one, in order to find out how to do that, finding the area, then we will do muna derivation of the Riemann sums. Okay? So, for the Riemann sums, this theory or this concept was derived or proposed by Bernhard Riemann. Siyempre, kaya nga Riemann sum kasi Bernhard Riemann, apelyido niya yan. He's a German mathematician who proposed this one and contributed a lot in our integral calculus. Okay? So, kudos to him. So, now, we will just derive the formula of the Riemann sum. Okay? So, let us say we are given a function f of x. This curve is f of x. Okay? Y is equal to f of x. And you are given a subinterval or a portion of that function a and b. Okay? So now if we have this portion, we will find the area that encapsulates or encloses this one and the function. So ito yung area. So paano natin siya gagawin? Napakahirap, di ba? Pero let us say we will construct rectangular partitions. Kasi yun yung pinaka-effective na way para malaman yung area ng loob. So, we will construct. So, now we have our rectangular partitions. And take note, since we have our rectangular partitions like this one, the widths of this rectangular partition should be having an equal basis. So, dapat equal yung base dito, equal yung base, equal yung base, equal yung base. At such time, sila lahat. Okay? Saan lang sila magkakaiba? Sa kanilang height. Okay? So, paano natin siya malalaman? Let's say we have already constructed a rectangular partition. Then, we say we have a point here. We will label that one as z sub I. Or in the first triangle, let's say z sub 1 yan. So, that is the value of x, z sub 1. And if we attach it here, dito hanggang dyan, that is the value of f of z sub I. Okay? That's f of z sub I. Now, in the basic means to find the area of that rectangle, we will just do the multiplication of width and length. So, we will just multiply this width and this length. And the width of this rectangle is the change of x. Kasi, change siya ng x from here to here. So, that's the increment of x. So, that is the width of that rectangular partition. And let us say, this is attached to the point z sub 1, then this one. So, therefore, we will just multiply the width, change of x, and the height, which is f of z sub 1. This is z sub 1. Okay? Z sub 1 yan. Then, meron yun siyang corresponding values here. This becomes z sub 2, z sub 3, z sub 4, z sub 5. So, that is the area of the rectangular one. Paano kung area of total? Sige, total daw area. The total area of this one will be delta x times f of z sub 1 plus delta x plus f of z sub 2 plus delta x times f of z sub 3. Since we have 6 triangles, we will do it until, let's say, we have done it until 6 kasi kailangan siya isa-isahin. F of z sub 6. Okay? And for the purpose that to apply the lesson in the past video, we can see that this is a complicated expression. Makikita natin ang daming plus. Paano tayo siya marireduce? So, to reduce this one, in short, the total area of that plane region is the summation of the product of the length and the width of all the rectangular partitions. In other words, this becomes f of z sub I times delta x, since all of the rectangular partitions have the same basis, from I is equal to 1 to n. It depends on how many number of rectangular partitions that is present on the area of the region. So, yan yung total area. And take note, I have a question to you guys. Is this our final answer? Or is this our final area? No. This will refer to our approximation for this region. Bakit approximation lang? It's because meron tayong portions dito na hindi nasali. Meron tayong portions dito sa ating rectangle na parang hindi siya exact. It's just, we just estimate this one. So, to further make it exact, we will just make smaller rectangles. Okay? Smaller rectangles. So, let's say we will create small rectangles, guys, ha? Okay, guys, we assume that their basis is equal. So, let's say smaller rectangles na. So, as we create smaller rectangles, what happens to the change of x is that it will reduce and it will approach to 0. Because, lumiliit yung ating size ng rectangular partitions, lumiliit din yung size nating width. Okay? So, what happens is that as change of x becomes 0, your number of rectangles also approaches infinity. Therefore, our formula for the Riemann areas or the Riemann sums is the limit of the summation of f of z sub I times change of x from I is equal to 1 to n as n approaches infinity. So therefore, this is our formula where your z sub I is a plus I times delta x and your delta x is equal to b minus a all over n. So, paano yan siya? Bakit b minus a all over n? Take note that all the sums of all bases are equal lang sa kanila. Yung bases dito, parehas sa base dito. Yung base dito, parehas lang. Kaya, kung ilahat na lang natin all over ilang rectangles yung present sa ating area, then that is the change of x of each of the rectangular partitions. And for z sub 1, you just use a plus I sub delta x, I times delta x, so that it will just go here. Parang it will just reflect on the position of the function. Okay? So, this is the formula for the Riemann sums. And that will also represent, since this is just a summation, that will also represent the integral of f of x dx from a to b. So this is the representation of our definite integral. By this case, by this lesson, we will solve the area or the functions or the indefinite integrals using Riemann sums. So to further understand this topic and this derivation, let's have some examples. Some examples, guys. For the first one, the integration of x plus 1 dx from 0 to 1. Okay? So let's graph muna what this is all about. Let's say your function f of x is x plus 1. Okay? And how to graph this one? Ganito. Diba? Ganyan yung graph niyan. And this is the portion from 0 to 1. Okay? Let's say there's a line here. There's a line here. Okay? So this is the portion of f of x is equal to x plus 1. This is our x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 0. Okay? So, yan siya. So, how to find the area? So, we will use the Riemann sum. Okay? So, the formula for the Riemann sum, as we recall, is lagyan na natin area is equal to, or let's say, pwede naman yung ganito na lang, equals na lang, the limit of the summation of f of z sub I delta x as I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. So, to further, before we simplify, before we go to this formula, we will just get muna z sub I and delta x. So, what is the delta x here? So, b minus a all over n. Wala tayong n, so 1 minus 0 all over n. Therefore, our delta x here is 1 over n. And for our z sub I becomes a plus I times delta x. Our a here is 0, so I times 1 over n. Therefore, our z sub I becomes I over n. Okay? This is our z sub I over n. So what happens here? We will substitute the z sub I to the f of x. And what is our f of x? X plus 1. So, the limit of the summation of 1 plus I over n, because pares lang yan, x plus 1 and 1 over 1 plus x, times the delta x, which is 1 over n. Okay? As I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. And as you can see here, we can do LCD. Okay? Unahin muna natin yung operation sa loob bago tayo sa labas. So, the summation of n, then this becomes n plus I times 1 over n. From I is equal to 1 to n, then as n approaches infinity. The next one, you observe that n can be factorable kasi n is a constant, diba? So, i-factor natin yung n. So, the limit of the summation of 1 over n squared times, ang natira is n plus 1. n plus I, rather. Where I is equal to 1 to n and hence n approaches infinity. So, ilabas na lang natin yung 1 over n squared. The limit of 1 minus n squared, the summation of n plus I, where I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. So, what happens next? Since this is a constant, isimplify muna natin itong nasa loob. And to simplify this one, okay, this is infinity ha. To simplify this one, we will distribute. And remember, this is a constant. So, n times n na lang siya. And this becomes the limit of quantity 1 over n squared times n squared plus. Remember, this is I. So, n times n plus 1 over 2. Okay? So, this becomes n times n plus 1 over 2. Okay? So, change ko lang yung ating bases. And as n approaches infinity. So, ito muna yan siya, guys. Okay? Let's change muna this one. Okay? So, ganyan yung nangyari. So, what happens here is that we will distribute n squared. Wala na kasi tayong summation pa. So, we will distribute n squared. And ang natira na lang is the limit of 1 plus, distribute natin yung n squared, this becomes n times n plus 1 all over 2n squared. Okay? Change the background, the braces, times as n approaches to infinity. Next is, remember, we can also distribute the limits. So, i-distribute natin yung limits. The limit of 1 as n approaches to infinity, and the limit of n squared plus n all over 2n squared as n approaches infinity. Kasi din-distribute natin siya. So, what happens here is that the limit of a constant is 1. So, therefore, this is 1 plus. And take note, we can separate this 1. Ang matitira is 1/2. So, this becomes the limit of 1/2 as n approaches infinity plus the limit of 1 over 2n as n approaches infinity. So, bakit 2n? Kasi, sineparate natin siya by algebra, then i-cancel ito. So, matitira is 1/2. Then, sa kabila, makakancel yung n, may n pa sa baba. Then, meron pang 2. So, that is 1 over 2n. So, what happens next is, we simplify na. And this is also a limit of a constant, so this becomes 1/2. 1 plus 1/2. And remember, the theorem of limits, where the limits of infinity is there, when this expression is seen, the value of this one is 0. Diba? Kasi the limit of this one as n approaches infinity, and remember, the theorem of this one is you will multiply both elements or both denominator and numerator by its highest degree. Then you will evaluate the limit. And ang answer nito is 0. Okay? So, we add na lang 1 and 1/2. So, the answer is 3/2. Okay? So, that is our final answer for that problem. Okay? It's a tedious process, guys, but don't worry. You will learn a lot for this case. Okay? You will learn a lot. So, let's have some second example. Second example. The integration of x squared dx from 1 to 2. Okay? So, what happens here is we will identify first our z sub 1 or z sub I, and we will also identify our delta x. And our a and b is given. A is 1, b is 2. Then our function f of x here is x squared. Okay? So, delta x is b minus a over n. So, this becomes 2 minus 1 over n is 1 over n. And for z sub I, a plus I times delta x. So, this becomes 1 plus I over n. Okay? So, yan na yung delta x natin in z sub I. So, meron na tayong values. Let's graph to understand. Remember, the graph of 1 minus x squared, I will just graph the right side of the function. And this is the graph of the right side of that function. Let's say this is y is equal to x squared, or f of x is equal to x squared, from x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 2. So, this portion is the area of that one. Okay? So, paano natin isosolve? Again, we will use the Riemann sum. So, the Riemann sum is the limit of the summation of f of z sub I times delta x as I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. Okay? So, we substitute the values. So, the limit of the summation of quantity 1 plus I over n squared times delta x, which is 1 over n, from I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. Then, the limit, you have no choice here, we will expand because this is a square of binomial. So, limit of the summation of 1 plus 2i over n plus I squared over n squared times 1 over n as I is equal to 1 to n and as n approaches infinity. Okay? What happens next is that we will LCD muna. We will find the LCD. So, the limit of the summation of n squared, yun siya. So, this becomes n squared plus 2i n plus I squared times 1 over n. So, yan na po yung nangyari. Okay? Take note, this is also constant. Constant po yan siya, guys. Okay? Constant ito. So, ilalabas natin yung yung n squared. Okay? So, this becomes I is equal to 1 to n, then as n approaches to infinity. The next, what happens is that the limit of the summation, ay labas na lang natin yung 1 over n raised to 3 or 1 over n cube. And this becomes the summation of I is equal to 1 to n of n squared plus 2in plus I squared. Okay? As n approaches infinity. Okay? Next, we will distribute the sigma. This becomes the limit of quantity. Let's change this one to brace. 1 over n cube times the summation. And remember, this is constant. So, n cube na lang to siya. Kasi n times n squared. So, this becomes n cube plus 2i, the summation, 2n, the summation of I from I is equal to 1 to n plus I squared, so the summation of I squared from I is equal to 1 to n as n approaches infinity. So, mapapansin natin, we can use our rules in summation. So, the limit of 1 over n cube times n cube plus 2n times n plus 1 over 2. Saan to galing? Sa ating rules of sigma notation. Okay? Plus, ang rule dito is n times n plus 1 over 2n plus 1 over 6. Okay? As n approaches infinity. As n approaches infinity. Okay? So, we will erase muna this one. Again, the limit of, i-distribute ko na siya kasi wala na tayong summation notation. So, i-distribute ko na yung 1 over n cube. So, this becomes 1 plus 2 over n squared times n plus 1 over 2 plus 6n, n times n plus 1 over 2n plus 1 over 6n cube as n approaches infinity. Okay? The next, remember the limit of the constant is 1. So, 1 plus the limit of 2 over n kasi magka-cancel to times n plus 1 over 2. Cancel din tong 2. Okay? So, sige, cancel ko na lang yung 2. So, this becomes n plus 1 over n. Okay? Plus the limit of cancel. So, this becomes n plus 1 times 2n plus 1 over 6n squared as n approaches infinity. And remember, if we will also separate these two, cancel to siya, matitira 1 over n. And yung 1 over n by limit theorems or limits of infinity, that will be equal to 0. So, therefore, ang matitira is 1 plus 1 plus 0. Okay? Plus ito, the limit of, i-expand natin to siya. So, this becomes 2n squared plus n plus 2n is 3n, then plus 1 all over 6n squared. Then, as n approaches infinity. Next, 1 plus 1 is 2. Then, plus the limit of, kung ano yung result dito, remember, if we separate again by algebra, this becomes 1/3. And this one, 0 na yung rest dahil sa limits of infinity. So, matitira is 2 plus 1/3. And if you add 2 and 1/3, the result will be 7 over 3. And this is your final answer for this case. Whew, it's really a tedious process, guys. Okay? It's really long. But you will learn a lot for this one because you have applied what we have reviewed last video. Okay? So, to further practice, let's have some practice quiz. Thank you so much guys for watching my videos. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, RJ's Math and Science Workshop. Then click the bell icon there for more updates, for more playlists, and for more series of requests. Okay, and share to the others guys, especially those who are taking their exams, taking their summative assessments, and doing their advanced classes. And shoutout nga pala kay Miss Aubrey Darlo and Tita Edna Catalonia. They are my families there in the Darlo clan. Hello po, and hello Aubrey. Stay safe there. And to all the supporters guys, thank you so much guys. Padayon lang ta guys sa itong pagtuon. We learn as one and we learn with fun in these videos guys in our channel. So thank you so much. See you to the next video.